Hey guys, Andrew Henderson, Nomad Capitalist in Agra, India, and I just watched some of the other videos here on YouTube about how to open an offshore bank account, and really more importantly, why you should open an offshore bank account. And I made a list, I'm going to reference my list here, of some of the reasons why you shouldn't open an offshore bank account, and some of the reasons why you should ignore the old school reasons to bank offshore. Now, as many people who have studied or even have a casual knowledge of banking offshore know, this is something that has a reputation back in the day, decades ago, of something where rich guys would put bags of cash in Switzerland and some Swiss banker would drive by their house, pick it up, fly back to Switzerland, and everything was undetectable, or so they thought. That's the old school way to do it. Now, obviously, what we do at Nomad Capitalist is I come out and I do videos, and I do them looking right at the camera, and we do it very transparently, and we do it in the modern way where things are open, things are more transparent. We're not about hiding money or running away from the government. We're about doing things legally. And unfortunately, a lot of the other videos that you see out there, a lot of the other resources that you see out there, some of which have even been shut down, are still telling you reasons to open offshore bank accounts and do other stuff offshore for illicit or shady purposes. And I can tell you, I've seen people who have done that. Some of these people come to me, they message me. It always creates more problems. And in many cases, it's a big problem. So let me go over some of the reasons why you should not open an offshore bank account. Number one is a reason that's often given, and that is privacy. Now, no doubt, there are some benefits where you can put a firewall between yourself and another government or another creditor by using an offshore bank account. You can make it harder for people just to come and grab your money. But when people talk about privacy, what you hear a lot about is your government never has to know. Now, if you're a U.S. citizen or a citizen of some other countries or a resident of any number of other countries, you probably have a legal obligation to report that account to your government. So when we're talking about privacy from the government, there are certain types of people, particularly those who live overseas, who can benefit from some kind of privacy. If you're a U.S. citizen, you really don't, from the government at least. Perhaps there is some kind of privacy from creditors or things like that. But I would chalk it up to just putting more of a distance between the creditor and your funds rather than so much of an extra level of privacy. So privacy can be okay, but do know that there are laws that you have to follow when it comes to opening offshore bank accounts, and you do not wish to run afoul of those. One of the other issues that I see is people still talking about tax havens. And people oftentimes mention specific countries. So in one case, I saw a video about Panama. In another case, I saw a video about Seychelles. And they're pitching their particular country, which I don't recommend, because if one guy has the solution for everyone's problems, and the solution is always Panama, it's probably not much of a custom solution. One-size-all solutions don't fit very well in the offshore world. But this talk of tax havens concerns me, because again, it's going to a different mindset. Now, there are ways to legally live overseas and move your business overseas and move your money overseas and pay no tax. The term tax haven makes me concerned, and I think you should be concerned by anybody who talks a lot about tax havens and how you should go to a tax haven. You should, as I say, go where you're treated best. We talk about going where you're treated best, which could mean low tax, but it could also mean that you have high-quality banks. And a lot of the banks that I've seen in a lot of these tax havens are of low quality. They've caused people a lot of problems, and it's certainly not going where you're treated best. So privacy and tax havens are two big concerns that I have. The other thing that on that same topic that concerns me is when people in these videos where they don't show their name or their face and they have some generic company name, when they talk about how you don't have to pay taxes in one of these tax havens on your foreign sourced income. So it's true. You can go down and open a Panama bank account for a Panama company, and if you set it up properly, then you won't pay any tax in Panama. But if you live in the United States, you're probably going to pay tax in the United States. If you live in Europe, you're going to pay tax where you live in Europe. If you live in Canada, Australia, any number of other places, most countries in the world that people are watching this in will tax you if you live there. So while there is a way to legally avoid taxation on what you do, this idea that all you need to do is open a Panama bank account and suddenly you're not going to pay tax is leading a lot of people to go down and get into a big world of hurt. And people have gone to jail. People have been fined. People have run into big problems by taking the advice from these nameless, faceless guys and just going down and opening bank accounts and thinking that suddenly they can invest their money however they wish and not pay tax. That's a problem. One of the other things that most people also might not detect from a lot of this shadier marketing is when people talk about lower cost. Generally, lower cost to me is very ironic in the offshore world because the guys who are selling you the stuff that comes at the quote-unquote lowest cost oftentimes ends up having the highest cost for the aforementioned reasons. They don't tell you to report it on your income tax return in the US or in Europe where you live, or Canada, Australia. And then you run into big problems where the tax authority comes after you and you end up paying a fortune in fines, penalties, legal fees, etc. So talking about privacy and tax havens and don't pay any tax and it's offshore and this and that, and doing so in a shady way, and then going and saying, hey, low cost, to me, is a recipe for disaster. Because the guy who charges the lowest cost is offering a very formulaic process. He doesn't care what you need. He doesn't care what happens where you live or where you're a citizen of. He just knows, hey, here in Panama or Seychelles or Nevis or whatever, here's how it works here. And you're not getting the advice that you need in the country that matters, which is where you're living or a citizen of. So opening offshore bank accounts is, I think, an important way to diversify. You don't need a lot of money to do it. There is a legal way to do it, but there is definitely a shift. And if you search around the internet, there are unfortunately a lot of folks who want to tell you stuff like it's still 1979. By the way, it wasn't legal then. It was just easier to get away with it. Doesn't mean it was right or wrong, and I'm not trying to give you a moral opinion. I'm just saying that in this day and age, there's only one way to go offshore, and that's to be transparent, to report what you have to report, to file what you have to file. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm saying it's a good idea to make sure that you don't end up spending a lot of money or getting into trouble. So if you're looking around the internet, these are some of the things that I'd like you to avoid. I'd like you to be cautious when you see this stuff. There are plenty of reasons to bank offshore, but if this is what you're being sucked into, realize that there may be a lot of problems if you follow this older school line of thinking. We have resources at nomadcapitalist.com. You can go there and figure out how to bank offshore legally and figure out what your next steps should be.